For 8 months, my parents had trudged through a parade of disappointments, houses that smelled of damp and defeat, apartments with walls so thin you could hear an egg bore sigh, places that were either a 2-hour commute from Dad's office or in a school district my mother referred to with a delicate, worried frown. Annie was 12, and my entire world had shrunk to the back seat of our sedan, filled with real estate brochures and a low, constant hum of parental anxiety. My needs in this grand housing equation were simple: a room with a window that didn't open onto a brick wall, and a proximity to Oakwood Middle School that didn't require a 5:45 de la mañana wake-up call. It seemed a modest ask, but the universe was not listening. Dad, a man whose optimism was usually as unshakable as his hairline, was beginning to fray at the edges. I'd see him after a viewing, slumped at our kitchen table in the temporary apartment, massing his temples. The plumbing was creative, etc., or the landlord seemed to think, historic charm was a suitable replacement for functional electrical wiring. Mom was the pragmatist, the anchor. She'd pat his hand and say, "We'll find the right one, Mark. It's out there." But even her voice had started to lose its conviction, taking on a thin, reedy quality that worried me more than Dad's grumbling. Then, on a rainy Tuesday that felt like every other day, the call came. Dad's entire posture changed as he listened on the phone. The weary slope of his shoulders straightened. A light I hadn't seen in weeks returned to his eyes. "You're kidding," he breathed into the receiver. "It's still available?" Yes, we can be there in 20 minutes. "No, we don't need to see it. We take it." He hung up and looked at us, a triumphant, almost giddy smile on his face. "We got it." "Got what?" Mom asked, her hands still deep in soapy water. "The house on Elmwood. The one with the big oak tree out front. The Pattersons finally decided to rent it out. It's within our budget, 10 minutes from my office, and," he said, turning to me with a flourish, "a 15-minute walk from Oakwood Middle School." A cheer erupted from me. The nightmare was over. We packed a single suitcase that night, a symbolic gesture, ready to leave the cramped, beige apartment behind for good. The first sight of 421 Elmwood Avenue did not disappoint. It was a charming 2-story colonial, painted a soft, welcoming gray with white trim. A wide porch wrapped around the front, begging for a rocking chair and a glass of lemonade. My room was upstairs, at the back of the house. It was spacious, with built-in bookshelves and a large window that flooded the space with afternoon light. He spun around, already imagining where my bed and desk would go. And then I looked out the window. My breath caught in my throat. Directly behind our new, perfect house, separated only by a narrow, overgrown alleyway, was another house. But this was no charming colonial. This was a structure of neglect and decay. It was a Victorian-era house, or it had been once. Now, its paint was a ghostly, peeling gray, the color of old bones. Several shutters hung askew, like broken limbs. The roof sagged in the middle, and the wraparound porch was a treacherous-looking maze of rotten boards. The windows were mostly dark, but a few were boarded up, the wood stained dark with moisture. An ancient, gnarled oak tree in the yard reached its claw-like branches toward the house as if trying to reclaim it. It was the definition of an abandoned house, the kind kids on bikes would dare each other to approach on a dare. "Man. Dad." He called out, my voice smaller than I intended. They came into the room, their arms around each other, beaming. "Isn't it great, Annie?" Dad said, his voice booming with pride. "Wait until you see the size of the master closet." He pointed a trembling finger. "What about that?" They followed my gaze. Mom's smile tightened slightly. "Oh. Well. That's unfortunate landscaping." "Unfortunate?" Yes, kid. It's a haunted house. It's right there." Dad chuckled, walking over to put an arm around me. "Come on, kiddo. It's just an old empty house. Probably been that way for years. Nothing to be scared of. Look at the view from the front. It tried to steer me away from the window, but my feet were rooted to the spot. Can't you find any other house? I pleaded, a familiar dread seeping back in. I don't like this room. I can see that thing from my window. The joy drained from Mom's face, replaced by a weariness I knew all too well. Anya, don't you know the struggle your dad went through trying to get a decent place to live? Do you have any idea how many applications we put in? This is a miracle. Then you guys take my room. I said, a tantrum brewing, born of fear and frustration. EJ, take yours. I don't want to stay in this room. I hate it. Annie, don't throw tantrums, Dad said, his voice losing its cheerful edge. Instead of focusing on these foolish negative things, help us get the house sorted. Unpack your stuff. Get your room set up the way you like it. There is a lot of work left to be taken care of. Come on, be a good girl. They left me standing there, staring at the monolith of decay. I knew it then, with a sinking certainty. No matter what I said, no matter how much I begged, I would not be getting the master bedroom. I was trapped. The first few days were a blur of cardboard boxes, the smell of fresh paint, and the constant hammering of Dad putting furniture together. During the day, with the sun shining and the movers bustling in and out, the abandoned house seemed less threatening. It was just an old building, a relic. My fear, while still present, began to fade into the background, another unpacked box tucked into a mental closet. I arranged my room carefully, positioning my bed so that my back was to the window. I hung posters on the wall facing it, a bright, colorful barrier between me and the view. I told myself it was fine. It was just a house. But that was different. As darkness fell, the house seemed to change. It stopped being a silent structure and began to feel like a presence. The streetlights didn't reach its facade, leaving it to drown in inky blackness. The crooked windows became dark, sightless as watching our bright, lively home with silent envy. I started closing my blinds long before sunset, creating a tight, secure seal against the outside world. One night, about a week after we moved in, I was lying in bed. It was 9 de la noche, the house was quiet, my parents already asleep down the hall. I was drifting on the edge of consciousness, my thoughts fuzzy, when a sudden, inexplicable urge made my eyes flutter open and turn toward the window. I had, foolishly, left a gap in the blinds. And through that gap, in the top floor window of the abandoned house, was a figure. It was just a silhouette, black against the deeper black of the room behind it. But its shape was unmistakably human. It was tall and unnaturally still, standing right at the glass, looking directly across the narrow divide into my room. I couldn't see any features, no eyes, no face, just a solid, man-shaped shadow of pure darkness, but I felt its gaze like a physical pressure. It was watching me. My blood turned to ice. Every hair on my arm stood up. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, trapped burn. I froze, paralyzed by a terror so complete it felt like I stopped breathing. This was no trick of the light, no waking dream. It was real. Someone was in that empty house, and they were staring at me. I squeezed my eyes shut, chanting in my head, "It's not real, it's not real," Jure imagining it, Jure half asleep. I counted to 10, my whole body trembling, and forced my eyes open again. It was still there. Unmoving. Watching. I smiled, terrified whimper escaped my lips. I scrambled out of bed, my legs tangling in the sheets, and stumbled out of my room into the hallway. I didn't walk, I ran, my bare feet slapping against the cold wooden floor. I burst into my parents' room without knocking. "Mom. Open the door. Mom, open the door. Mom." My voice was a hysterical screech. My mom bolted upright, her hair a mess, her eyes wide with alarm. Dad groaned and rolled over. "Bah. Annie? What's wrong?" "Mom, I saw someone." He saw someone standing in the window of that abandoned house. Please, come into my room and see. Please. Ma'am Said, the initial alarm replaced by weary irritation. She got out of bed, pulling her robe on. Anye, for heaven's sake. You probably had a bad dream. It wasn't a dream. He was awake. She followed me back to my room, her footsteps heavy with sleep. He pointed a shaking finger at the window. There. Right there, in the top window. Look. Mom leaned forward, squinting through the slats of the blinds. She looked for a long moment. She sighed again, this time with finality. Where, Anye? There is no one there. It's empty. What? No. It was right there. A man. Just standing there. He pushed her aside and looked for myself. She was right. The window was empty. Just the dark, vacant square. Listen, Mom said, her voice firm but gentle. She put her hands on my shoulders. At night, even normal things can seem abnormal. A shadow from a tree branch, a trick of the light. This is why I keep telling you not to watch so many horror movies. You fill your head with nonsense and then your mind plays tricks on you. Ma'am, I swear. There was someone in that window. It was nothing. You were just imagining it, okay? Now, back to bed. You have school tomorrow. She kissed my forehead and left, closing the door behind her. I stood alone in the dark, staring at the empty window. I felt a profound sense of isolation. They didn't believe me. I knew what I saw. The memory of that silent, watching figure was burned into my mind. The next day at school, I was a zombie. I couldn't concentrate. My friend, Choi, nudged me at lunch. Hey, Earth to Annie. You okay? You look like you didn't sleep all night. I unloaded the whole story on her, the mood, the house, the figure in the window. Her eyes grew wide. Wow. That's seriously creepy. You sure it wasn't like, a coat on a hanger or something? It was a person, I said with absolute certainty. It was watching me. Maybe it's a squatter, she suggested. Some homeless guy moved in. The idea was almost comforting. A real, living person, however creepy, was better than the alternative my imagination was beginning to concoct. But the logic didn't hold. Why would a squatter stand motionless at an upstairs window in the dark, staring into a little Hills room? That night, a knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach as bedtime approached. I checked the blinds 3 times, making sure they were sealed shut. I climbed into bed and lay there rigid, staring at the ceiling, listening to every creak and groan of the new house. I refused to look at the window. But the pull was magnetic. Against my own will, my head turned. I saw the thin line of yellow light from a distant streetlight seeping through the blind gap. I had to know. Atto. I slowly, quietly, slipped out of bed. I crept to the window, my heart thudding. I held my breath and leaned forward, putting my eye to the narrow opening. And I saw it again. The same figure. In the same window. Utterly still. Utterly dark. Staring. This time, fear was eclipsed by a surge of pure anger. This was intentional. Someone was doing this to me. My mom's words from the previous night echoed in my head, some neighborhood kids are playing a prank on you. Of course. That had to be it. Some stupid kid from school had found out I was scared of the place and decided to torture me. Well, I was done being scared. He was going to be furious. He stormed out of my room and into my parents' bedroom. Mom. Come here quickly. You didn't believe me and told me I was imagining things. Sí. Someone is there. My dad sat up this time, I eat it. Anye. Do you know what time it is? You started shouting at this time? Don't you care that your father is asleep? But, ma'am, enough. That house is empty. When no one lives there, who would be standing at the window? Yes, exactly. That's the point. This is why I'm so shocked. Isn't it weird? Mom looked from my frantic face to that angry one. She had a new theory, one born of desperation for a quiet night. Look, Anya, it's Halloween time. I'm sure some neighborhood kids are playing a prank on you. They're trying to scare the new girl. It's immature, but it's not a monster. Halloween. The word landed with the force of truth. Oh. Oh, yeah. Hadn't they thought of that? Of course. Some kid was playing a prank on me. The relief was so potent it made me dizzy. It was just a stupid, mean kid. Please get some sleep now, okay? Mom said, ushering me out. Back in my room, I felt a new resolve. A prank. Okay. You could play at that game. I decided right then that I was going to catch that little terror. Either find out who it was, march right to their house the next day, and tell their parents. They get grounded without candy for a month. The thought brought a smile to my face. The plan formed quickly. The next night, I would be ready. Either wait until I saw the figure, and then I wouldn't dare run to my parents. I would run to the source. Either sneak into the abandoned house, creep upstairs, and catch the kid red-handed with his flashlight or whatever he was using. Either give him the scare of his life. The following evening, I told my parents I was extra tired and was going to bed early. They exchanged a pleased, relieved glance. I went to my room and changed into dark jeans and a black hoodie, my spy outfit. I pocketed my phone, its flashlight up ready to be my weapon. At 8:55 de la noche, I positioned myself by the window. The street was quiet. My parents were watching TV downstairs. The glow from the screen flickered in the hallway. I peered through the blinds. Nothing. 9 de la noche. Nothing. 9:05 de la noche. A flutter of doubt. What if he wasn't coming? What if it had just been a two-night thing? And then, at 9:07 de la noche, the figure materialized. It was there again, in its same spot, a sentinel of darkness. Adrenaline shot through me. This was it. Time for Operation Scare the Prankster. I slipped out of my room and down the stairs, avoiding the squeaky third step. The front door groaned as I opened it, and I froze, listening. The TV continued to drone on. I slipped out into the cool night air, closing the door softly behind me. The world outside was different. Colder, quieter. The familiar street looked alien under the dim yellow glow of the old streetlights. The abandoned house loomed ahead, its silhouette jagged and hungry against the night sky. My brave determination began to waver, replaced by the old, familiar dread. This had seemed like a much better idea from the safety of my well-lit bedroom. But I was here now. I had to see it through. I crossed our lawn, then the narrow, weed-choked alley that separated the two properties. The air felt heavier here, colder. The grass was damp and long, soaking my sneakers. The porch stairs of the abandoned house groaned a protest under my weight, a sound of wood so rotten it was a miracle it held me. The front door was slightly ajar, just as Ide hoped it would be. It was how the kid was getting in. I took a deep breath, pushed it open, and stepped inside. The smell hit me first, a thick, oppressive cocktail of dust, mold, and the sweet, rotten scent of decaying wood. It was dark, so incredibly dark. The little light from outside did nothing to pierce the deep gloom of the interior. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut a swath through the darkness, illuminating a living room frozen in time. A threadbare sofa, its fabric chewed away by moths and time, slumped against one wall. An old, overturned chair. A layer of dust, thick as snow, covered every surface. Cobwebs hung like ghostly drapes from the ceiling, swaying gently in the draft from the open door. The wallpaper was peeling, revealing the lath beneath, like skin peeled back from bone. "Hello?" he called out, my voice a tiny, trembling thing that was instantly swallowed by the silence. "I know you're in here." The joke is over. Silence. My bravado was leaking away fast, replaced by a primal, screaming instinct to get out. This was a bad place. This felt wrong. But I was already here. He had to go upstairs. That's where he was. The staircase was ahead, a dark mouth waiting to swallow me. He approached it, my flashlight beam shaking. The stairs creaked and moaned with every step I took, a symphony of protest. He held onto the banister, and it felt grimy and unstable under my hand. He reached the top. The hallway was long and dark, with several doors leading off it. All were closed except one at the very end. The door to the room that faced my house. The room with the window. My heart was a drum solo in my chest. He could see a sliver of deeper darkness from that open door. He took a step, then another, my feet whispering through the dust on the floor. He was at the door. He took a final, steadying breath, tightened my grip on my phone, and stepped into the room. He swung my flashlight beam around. The room was empty. There was no one there. No Keith. No prankster. No flashlight. No chair to stand on. Nothing. Used an empty, dusty room with a single, grimy window that looked directly into my bedroom. The view was unsettlingly intimate. He could see my own window, my posters on the wall. He was the silhouette now. A cold, bottomless terror began to well up inside me. If there was no one here, then what had I been seeing? Who had I been seeing? Kaeaak. Tooth. The sound came from downstairs. The distinct, horrifying sound of the front door being pulled shut. And then the deadbolt sliding home with a final, metallic click. No. No, no, no. He ran. He didn't think. He just ran, panic lending me speed. He flew down the hallway, down the treacherous staircase, taking the steps two at a time, my flashlight beam jouncing wildly, creating nightmare shapes on the walls. He skidded to a halt at the front door. I grabbed the knob, twisted, and pulled. It didn't move. He pulled harder, putting my whole weight into it. Nothing. It was locked. Solid. Jammed shut. No. He screamed. I threw my shoulder against the old, solid wood. It didn't even shudder. Please. Open. Open. He was crying now, great heaving sobs of pure, undiluted fear. I fumbled with the deadbolt, but it was old and rusted, and it wouldn't turn. He was trapped. Help. Someone. Help me. I'm in here. Amy, oh Amy. Death. He screamed until my throat was raw, pounding on the door with my fists. But the house was a tomb. It swallowed my screams, absorbing them into its dusty, silent heart. No one came. Our house was right there, just across the alley. He could see its warm, welcoming lights. But they felt a million miles away. Exhausted, I slid down to the floor, my back against the door, and buried my face in my knees. He was sobbing, shaking, completely alone. What was I going to do? He was locked in this horrible place all night. That's when I heard it. A sound from upstairs. A soft, shuffling footstep. Then another. Slow, deliberate. It was moving across the floorboards of the room I had just been in, the room with the window. My blood froze. My sobs choked off. He held my breath, listening. Shuffle, drag, shuffle, drag. It was on the landing now. It was at the top of the stairs. He couldn't see it from where I was crouched by the door, but I could hear it. He could feel it. A presence, cold and ancient and malicious, was at the top of those stairs, and it was beginning to descend. Crack. The first step groaned under its weight. Crack. The second step. I scrambled away from the door, pressing myself into the darkest corner of the foyer, behind the rotten sofa. I turned off my pony's flashlight, plunging myself into absolute blackness. I wanted to disappear. Crack, crack, crack. It was coming down, step by agonizing step. The air grew colder, so cold I could see my panicked breath forming little plumes of mist in the dark. The smell changed, though. The dust and mold were now undercut by a new scent, something foul and coppery, like old meat and wet earth. Crack. It had reached the bottom of the stairs. He could hear it breathing now. A wet, rasping sound, like air being dragged through broken lungs. Shuffle, drag, shuffle, drag. It was in the living room with me. He squeezed my eyes shut, praying to a God I wasn't sure was listening. Maybe if I couldn't see it, it couldn't see me. The shuffling stopped. The rasping breath was right in front of me. It had found me. I slowly, terrifiedly, opened my eyes. The darkness was no longer absolute. I could see its shape, blacker than the blackness around it, towering over me. It was the silhouette from the window, but up close, it was so much worse. It had no face, just a terrifying blankness, but I could feel its attention, its hunger, focused entirely on me. A cold so intense it felt like burning radiated from it. A long, thin, impossibly dark arm began to extend from its side. A hand with too many joints and fingers that ended in points reached slowly for my face. He did the only thing I could. He screamed. He screamed with every ounce of air in my lungs, a raw, primal sound of pure terror. I scrambled out from behind the sofa, lunging for the door, yanking and pulling at the knob with a strength born of sheer panic. And the door flew open. It wasn't jammed anymore. It wasn't locked. It swung open easily, as if it had never been stuck at all. He didn't question it. He didn't look back. He exploded out of that house and across the alley, not stopping until he burst through my own front door, slamming it shut behind me and locking it, my chest heaving. My mom came out of the living room, a bowl of popcorn in her hand. Annie? What on earth? Were you outside? He thought you were in bed. I was crying, gasping, trying to form words. The house, it locked me in. That appeared behind her. What house? The old house? Annie, were you in there? He told you to stay away from there. It's dangerous. The floors could have given way. It wasn't the floors. It's it. There is something in there. It came down the stairs. It tried to touch me. My parents looked at each other. It was the same look from before. The "ses imagining things again" look. But this time, it was tinged with anger. That's it, Dad said, his voice tight. No more horror movies. No more internet stories. You are working yourself into a hysterical state over nothing. You went into a dangerous building, got scared by the dark, and now you're having a panic attack. Go to your room. Now. But. Now, Annie. He ran upstairs, sobs racking my body. They didn't believe me. They would never believe me. He curled up on my bed, still in my dirty clothes, and cried myself into a fitful, exhausted sleep. The next morning, everything was different. The sun was shining. The birds were singing. The memory of the previous night felt like a distant, fuzzy nightmare. My parents were quiet at breakfast, but they weren't angry anymore. They just looked concerned. Annie, honey, Mom said, pushing a plate of pancakes toward me. We're sorry, we yelled. We were just worried. You can't go into places like that. It's not safe. I know, I mumbled, my appetite gone. I'm sorry. It's okay, Dad said, smiling. It was his old, warm smile. We're just glad you're safe. Now, eat up. You don't want to be late for school. Something fell off. The tension from last night was gone, evaporated. It was too easy. They were being too nice. But I was so grateful for the normality that I pushed the feeling aside. He went to school. I told Chloe I'd gone into the house and that it was just empty and creepy. I didn't they tell her about the thing on the stairs. Didn't they tell anyone. He just wanted to forget. When I came home, my mom had made cookies. The house smelled amazing. She was humming in the kitchen. How was school, sweetie? She asked. It was okay, I said, dropping my backpack. Those smell good. They're your favorite, chocolate chip. Why don't you go get started on your homework? He went up to my room. The door was closed. He pushed it open. And I stopped dead. My room was different. All my things were there, but they were rearranged. Neatly. Too neatly. My bed was made with military precision, the corners tucked in tight. My books were organized by height on the shelves, not by genre like I liked them. The posters on my wall, the ones I'd put up to block the view, were gone. Taken down. And the blinds on the window were wide open. The abandoned house stood there, silent in the afternoon sun. A cold knot formed in my stomach. Mom. He called out, my voice trembling. She appeared at the door. Yes, dear. Did you clean my room? She smiled. It was my mom's smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. They looked flat. I just tidied up a bit. It was a mess in here. And I took down those tacky posters. They were ruining the wall. And let's have some light in here, shall we? Such a beautiful view. She walked over and stood by the window, looking out at the abandoned house. She didn't seem unsettled at all. She seemed pleased. I don't like the view, I whispered. She turned to look at me, and her head tilted just a fraction too far. Don't be silly, Anya. It's a wonderful view. Now, get your homework done. Dinner will be ready soon. She left, closing the door behind her. He stood in the middle of my alien room, a terror far greater than any I felt in the abandoned house creeping over me. This was wrong. All of it was wrong. At dinner, Dad was quiet. He kept looking at me, but not at me. It was like he was looking at a puzzle he was trying to solve. How was your day, Anya? He asked, his voice careful. Fine, I said, pushing my food around my plate. Did you learn anything interesting? It was such a weird, stilted question. I never asked that. I usually asked if I beat Chloe at Foursquare or what they served for lunch. Not really, I said. I nodded slowly, then looked at my mom. She gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of her head. The days bled into one another. A new routine established itself, but it was a hollow, painted